is up, everybody? Luke here again. Believe it or not, this is episode 8 of the SnowTrax live series, brought to you guys by Skidoo. And as always, we'll start off by just saying a big thank you to our sponsor, Skidoo, for backing this project. And I'm really super happy that they did, because it's probably not something I would have thought of initially, but because they came on board with us, we're doing it, and I'm absolutely loving it, and I hope you guys are loving it too. So anyway, that's a big thank you to Skidoo. As always, again, I'll just say that this is brought to you by Skidoo, but it doesn't mean we have to stick to just talking about Skidoos. We can talk about any brand and any topic related to snowmobiling that you guys want to talk about. So in the past, I've kind of come here with a topic to start with, but then I realized you guys don't know what that topic is. So I throw it out to you, and then it's kind of like a few minutes before you actually come on board and start asking me questions about it while you think about, what you think about it. There you go. So I thought I'd just start with a little story. I told you guys last week that I had hoped to have some guys from Skidoo on the show last week, but their flights were delayed and whatever, and they couldn't make it, so they didn't end up being on the live episode. I did get to ride with them the next day, though. They did show up, and we did a 220 kilometer ride. For anybody who knows the area I'm in Haliburton County, Ontario, Canada, we rode from Minden, where I live, all the way up through Haliburton towards the town of Whitney, up the Hydroline Trail. Anybody who knows this area knows the Hydroline Trail. And we literally were first tracks almost the whole way. It was unreal. There was a section of probably 60 kilometers where I was the first one behind the groomer. It was so good. We had a great day, great time hanging out with those guys from Skidoo. And I mean, it's really interesting hearing their perspective on things right now, and how they're feeling about the season, and how they're feeling about sales and products, and what's coming and what's not. I will say they gave me some secrets that I'm not going to tell you guys, because I respect their trust in me. But it is exciting what's likely in the future for Skidoo. So everybody needs to stay tuned for that. On that topic, I thought I'd give you guys a little, I don't know, maybe rundown on what you want to call it, but many of you have probably heard about it. We've done stories on it way in the past on SnowTrax, but every year media from all around really the world, North America, but also the world, converges on West Yellowstone, Montana at a secret location. All 4 manufacturers, all 4 whoever's available, whoever's there now. Obviously Yamaha's not showing up, but Lynx is now. So 4 manufacturers all show up with all of their next year's models. So it'll be the 2027 models they're showing up with this time. And all the magazines, television shows, websites, blogs, you name it. Everybody shows up at a specific time. Everybody has a certain time sort of slot. We go there for 4 days of riding. Ride as many things as we can. We shoot as much footage as we can. And it's a really cool event. After Snowshoot is over, there's usually about a week where the things we see at Snowshoot are still secret. We're not allowed to say anything about it. But then what they call embargoes, the manufacturers have what they call embargoes, which means we know about what's coming, but we've signed our lives away and can't tell anybody about it until the embargo lifts. At that point, we can talk freely about whatever we want to talk about. So that's coming up for us in not that long. It's like four weeks from now. I think somewhere in that neighborhood, 4 weeks, 3 weeks maybe, that we're going to do this, which is awesome. And it's also awesome because after I get back, I'm going to have some stuff to talk to you guys about. We're also likely going to do, it might be one of these on a Tuesday night. I'm not really sure exactly how it's going to lay out, but we'll figure it out. Where AJ, Mike, and myself, I'm not really sure which 3 it'll be, me for sure, but then either one or both of them, are just going to kind of recap what we saw at Snowshoot and give you guys a rundown of what's coming up in 27 and what we were excited about and anything really cool that we saw. So that'll be coming up here at some point. I see some comments here about Mark's podcast. I got to say a huge thank you to you guys for all of you who did watch it and left comments. I don't think you could possibly understand just how much that meant to Mark. He is retired, officially retired now. And it's not been the easiest transition for him, not because he doesn't have things to do, but because he's been Mark Lester for so long. He's been the boss of everything around here, SnowTrax, SuperTrax magazine, everything that we've done around here. He was the boss. And long before that, when I was just in high school, still like working, writing for SuperTrax magazine in the summers, obviously he was the boss, and he is still and will always be one of the most respected media personalities in the snowmobile industry, in the history of the snowmobile industry, in my opinion. I really believe that. And so it was hard on him when he took a step back from all of this and was no longer the boss and was no longer on TV or writing articles and stuff. That was really difficult. So he actually came up with Snowflap. That was his idea. It wasn't something we asked him to do. He came to us and he said, "Hey, I'd really like to do this. I think there's some legs to it. Would you guys be interested?" And of course, I jumped on it right away. Like, we have to do this. And you guys proved that it was 100% worth it. I mean, he had 10,000 views in like 2 days, which is excellent. And all of the comments were super positive. You guys were great. So I just want to say a huge thank you to you guys for that. If you haven't checked out Mark's Snowflap podcast, it is on our YouTube channel. You can go there and see it and listen. We're calling it a podcast. It's not really a podcast. It's a segment on YouTube, but it's sort of, what would you say? It's sort of like configured like a podcast in that it's mostly just him talking to camera with very little visual aids. You could listen to it in the car. It would be fine to do that kind of stuff like a podcast. But anyway, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. The first episode he did, I think it was on sort of the birth of the modern snowmobile as we know it today, which was in relation to things like trailing arm suspensions, and when snowmobiles went from being pretty rudimentary vehicles with just leaf springs, and all of them had them, to having modernized front suspension, independent front suspension designs, and how that changed the sport and really, really was the beginning of the modern snowmobile as we know it. So it's the history behind that. It's all the steps in the process. There's tidbits of information that maybe no one knows. It's amazing. I've grown up with Mark my entire life. Obviously, he's my dad. And I've heard so many stories, and all like historical stories and little tidbits of information. But it seems like every time he opens his mouth, something new comes out that I'm like, well, I never heard that before. So when he was recording that podcast, I was watching, and a bunch of stuff came out. I was like, well, there you go. Now I have more information, and you guys can too, so check that out. Let's see. Let's just look at some comments here, see if you guys got any questions. I want to hear what you guys are thinking. What's on your mind? We got snow here in Ontario right now. We had rain. It seems for some reason the weather patterns these days are just so messed up. Like, we will have super cold, minus 20 Celsius, and then it'll snow like crazy for a few days and stay cold, and then all of a sudden it'll warm up to like +5 and pour rain for an afternoon or for a day, and then it immediately gets cold again and snows. I don't know why we can't just have a steady cold front that comes in and stays here and just keeps the snow, but it seems like every time we get snow, we get rain. Hasn't wiped us out. Trails are still open. We got snow yesterday. Well, for the past 3 days, it's been lightly snowing. Today, it's snowing quite a bit, and we will have trails back open. The clubs have been grooming, so it hasn't wiped us out. It's just kind of disappointing because I think total snowfall, if it accumulated and didn't rain, would be really significant this year. But it just keeps getting beaten down by the rain. Snowmobilers, I don't know what do you guys think of this? But we're so optimistic, right? We're always trying to look for the best. I think I am anyway when it comes to the weather and when it comes to snowmobiling. It's funny because I joke to people that doesn't matter when in the winter season that we get a warm spell or we get rain, our comment as snowmobilers is always the same. It's like, oh, this is going to create a really good base. It could be like, March 30th and we get some rain. We're like, no, don't worry about it. It's going to be a really good base. And that's what we've been saying this year. But the truth is we have a really good base. So hopefully you guys are riding as well. Kyle Blum 6530. What do you know about the skidoo? I'm not telling. I can't tell. I know that there's some changes coming for 27, some minor ones that actually make a huge difference. I've tried them already. The guys brought us some parts when they came up, and we tested some stuff, and to say AJ and I were both, and Mike, were a little bit impressed would be super wrong. We were so impressed with just a minor change made to some skidoo models that is going to make a massive difference in handling, so you guys can stay tuned for that. And there'll be more details on that coming out soon, but I'm not going to tell you what it is or how it works or any of that stuff. I'm just going to tell you that you're going to have a better snowmobile in 2027, that's for sure. Let's see. First Amendment t-shirt, 4768. I was looking at Arctic Cat today, RXC and EXT. Has small screen, the other big one. They have such small seats. They said the 900 is the same as a Thundercat. Okay, so the RXC is their cross-country racer wannabe, kind of like an XRS or an XCR. Um, so it has the small screen because it's meant to be more of a racer type sled. The EXT has the big screen because it's meant to be more of a two-stroke luxury sled, all the bells and whistles. It even has power steering, so that's why it gets the big screen, because it's got everything. The small seats you won't even notice. I find the Arctic Cats to be wildly comfortable. Their ergonomics is amazing, and I actually like the seat. Maybe it's not for everybody, but I really like it. And they said the 900 is the same as the Thundercat. I'm not really sure what that means. They don't have a 900, so I don't know. But anyway, yeah, the RXC is a cool sled. I really like it. We have an EXT on the way. It was supposed to be here 2 weeks ago, last week. It's supposed to be here yesterday. It's supposed to be here tomorrow. It hasn't showed up yet. That and another 858. So we'll see when those things come out. But when we do, be sure we'll have some walk around videos for you guys to look at. Michael Gardner 185. Why does Skidoo put torsion springs on that are only for a 180-pound man? I'm 280 and had to buy bigger springs. Seems like everyone I know has to put bigger ones on, especially with gear and a gas caddy. It's a really good question. It's one of those things that Skidoo has to make or has to build sleds, calibrate sleds for a wide range of people. I don't know why the weight range that they have parts calibrated for is what it is, because like you, I know a lot of bigger guys who are well over 200 pounds. Like I would say, it's 50-50 for the guys I ride with that are bigger like that, bigger like me, and then smaller. So I can set up the torsions. That sled behind me has the torsions set up right. I'm 250 pounds, and I can get it set up on the second to stiffest setting. That's right for me. If you're bigger than me, though, which you are a little bit, you may be over the limit. So, yeah, I don't know. The one that gets me, though, is how come certain sleds don't come with springs that are soft enough for a smaller rider? I mean, if you think about it, there are a lot of younger riders and women who can't even move the suspension on their sleds on the softest settings because they don't weigh enough. So it goes both ways, really, when you think about it. Super Dan, his podcast was awesome. That's great, man. Just so you guys know, Mark has read every single comment. He comes up to my office like 3 times a day and says, "Hey, did you see the numbers?" He's so pumped. Anyway, New Hampshire Vintage just got the Lynx Commander. What's your opinions on it? Can't wait for the utility sled comparison video or shootout. Yeah, the Commander is ridiculous. We have one as well, and it's a supremely awesome snowmobile. It's so weird too. It's such a 20-inch wide with a full width front end, arched A arms. You know, it's like it's got full jam shock package, right? Like Pro 40 shock package. Ours is a turbo, so it's like 200 horsepower. It's such a weird snowmobile, but they're really fun and super fun to ride, and they're really awesome. So I think you're gonna love it. He sled, she sled. I love that name. Your dad influences. Love your dad's influence on the sport. Gonna miss hearing his voice. Used to love watching him on the TV. Yeah, you know what? It is a sad day that he's retired, but I think he's earned it. He's been sort of retired for a long time because literally, I think I've told you guys the story before, but for the past 5 years minimum, but probably longer, Mark's house is right beside our office. I'm in our office right now. I'm in the studio. Upstairs of this studio here is where all of our actual offices are. And Mark's house is literally like, we share the same driveway. He would come to work every day, fully dressed in his riding gear. And he would sit in his office at his desk, at his computer, doing the work he needed to do, fully dressed. He had pants, boots, tech vest on. He put his jacket on the hanger, helmet on the couch, and do his work. The second he clicked send on the last email that needed to be sent, he was fully dressed and out the door, and we wouldn't know where he was for the whole rest of the afternoon. And that was every single day, every day. It's pretty hard. You'd be pretty hard pressed to find somebody who's more passionate about snowmobiling than Mark is. The truth. That's the God honest truth. So yeah, he's retired now. He doesn't have to go to work wearing his gear, but I'm pretty sure he sits at breakfast with my mom dressed in his riding gear because he still rides every day. Scott McGregor 2757. How is it that the Lynx rear suspension is basically identical to Yamaha's Pro Action rear of the 2000s? Was trashed always, but it's praised on the Lynx. Kind of silly. Shows how good it was. It is nothing at all like the Pro Action of the 2000s on a Yamaha. PPS3 is a completely unique design. It may look similar in that it's got arms in the same angles, whatever, but it is absolutely not the same design as Yamaha's Pro Action was. Yeah, there's, other than maybe how it looks, there's very few similarities there whatsoever, other than just it is a snowmobile skid frame, so there will be similarities, but it's not the same thing. The biggest difference would be that it works. And the Pro Action and a Yamaha in the 2000s didn't. Simple as that. Let's see. Went to a local skidoo, Snowmobile Freak 88. Went to a local skidoo dealer and I am renting a Lynx X-Train 900 Turbo R so I can decide if I'm going to snow check one. That's a good idea. I'm surprised that there's dealers who will rent those. I'm not sure where you're located, Snowmobile Freak, but if you can do that, do it. I've said this before, like, I'm not a four-stroke guy, but I've spent quite a bit of time on that sled. And honestly, it's very impressive. I spent a whole day on it the other day. I rode it all day, and I was really, really impressed. I'm still not a four-stroke guy, but that doesn't mean I can't ride that sled and love it. I spent a whole day on the 850 as well, and that's what I am. Two-stroke 850 is just perfect. But if you want a four-stroke, this behind me is the one to have, no questions asked. It absolutely is. First Amendment t-shirt. Yeah, they do have a 900. What in Arctic Cat's lineup is a 900? They have an 858. I can't even think of a four-stroke. The four-strokes are all the 998 Yamaha motors, aren't they? Anyway, if you can fill me in and figure out which one of them is a 900, I don't know. Joel Surratt 3751. What is the average amount of time high-fax sliders should last? Long-time dirt bike rider, but fairly new to snow machines. 26. I'm assuming that's 2016 Grand Touring 1204 Tech, and wore a set out on one ride. Wow. Okay. Now, I guess that would be determined by what you think wore out a set is. There are lots of times, like when you put on new slide rails, new high-fax, they are evenly thick all the way along. They're a uniform thickness, but the way the track interacts with your high-fax will wear them more in some spots than others. But what you'll find is there will be that wear pattern, and it'll look really thin in one spot, but it won't wear any further than that for thousands and thousands and thousands of kilometers or miles. It just needs to take in its set. So I'm not sure if that's what you're seeing, but if you literally wore a set right out in one ride, was there any snow that you were riding on? The only reason slide rails should wear out that fast is if there's no snow and you're heating them up too much. That's the only reason. The Grand Touring doesn't have a massive lug track, so there should be no problem with that. Yeah, man, I don't know what to say about that. That's really, really weird. But again, it could be a wear pattern that looks like they're wearing out and they're not. But if you were running in really low snow conditions and they were getting really hot, you could smell them. That's the big one. You know your high-fax is wearing because you can start to smell it. You'll also feel the sled slowing down like somebody's got the brakes on because the plastic is literally melting to the clips on the track. And if you run it long enough like that, eventually the high-fax will just melt completely to the clips of the track and your track will stop spinning. When I was a kid, I had it happen to me on a ZR 580 on my way to high school. I used to ride to school every day down, there's a 4-lake chain. And it was after a rain the night before, everything froze, and there was just these little tufts of snow scattered about on this big lake, glare ice, and I took off like, I'm riding to school, forget it, I'm gonna do it. And halfway down the big lake, man, it just locked right up, like somebody grabbed the brakes, and fortunately I got it unstuck and got it back to school, but it's the only time it's ever happened to me. Hunt's Solo G1E. Any new 340s from Polaris? No, and you're not going to see new 340s. You know, there's a reason why we've gone away from these small displacement engines, these fan-cooled two-strokes, and it's all about emissions. For every one of those motors that a manufacturer makes, they have to either pay an offset charge because they're dirty, or they have to build a super clean motor to offset it. Skidoo is in a great place for doing that because their e-tecs are clean and their four-strokes are clean. Polaris is in a tougher place because their two-strokes are relatively clean, but and they only have one four-stroke, so they are desperately trying to get away from those small displacement motors. Joel Eichner, what was faster top end, the Thundercat with a 1-inch track or the Yamaha SRX with a 125 track a few years ago? Was the gearing the same? Those are great questions. We did run those two sleds side by side. we didn't have an ice track, it was snow. And in the snow, it was hard pack snow, but it was snow. There was really no difference at all. I don't know about the gearing. I can't answer that. I don't know about that. But they were right with each other the whole way. There wasn't really one that stood out more than the other. So as far as the track was concerned, that extra 1/4 inch made literally no difference. If you were on an ice track, it might. But in the snow, the track sinks in one way or another, you know. Joel Surratt. Is that the importance of scratchers? Yes, it absolutely is the importance of scratchers. You only need scratchers if you're in low snow. If you have even a couple inches of fresh snow on top of hard pack or ice, you should be good unless you're running a 2-inch paddle. If you're running a standard paddle on a sled like a Grand Touring, a couple inches of snow will be enough to keep you cool. But if you're running in areas where there's patches of snow and then it gets frozen and then patches of snow, the scratchers are the answer to that problem. So I really think in today's day and age, unless you live in Alaska or something, putting scratchers on your sleds is not a bad idea. Maybe you never need them, but the times you do, you'll be glad you have them. Snowmobile Freak 88, really hoping Skidoo and Lynx come out with EPS on 4-stroke sleds. I think that would be a really smart move. I really do. I think that we're at a position now in the industry where, especially with 4-strokes, we've got sleds that are so light now that EPS isn't going to make a big difference. It is an expensive upgrade. It's a lot more expensive than people think as far as what it actually costs to put it on a sled. But I really think you're right. We should be putting EPS on 4-strokes, and who knows? Maybe that's what we'll see. I really don't. 460 SW3. Hopefully it has to do with the gauge that actually works. It works. It's just a little complicated. Chad Gale 9305. Your dad's snowmobile stories are amazing. Great detail and facts and stuff nobody knows except him. Him and a very few other people. That is true. He knows the difference between like a 1981 and a 1981 and a half Yamaha SRV or something like that. And I remember hearing him tell me this story. He's like quizzing somebody who was supposed to know. He's like, what's the difference between those two? And the guy's like, well, I don't know. And he was from Yamaha. And Dad's like, well, the 1981 and a half had gold idler wheels instead of black idler wheels. And it's like, how does a person know that, He does, though. Powderhound 907. Springs are an unfortunate necessity for sleds. Getting the correct spring is the most important adjustment to make. I try and get the sled sagging in about 25% on the softest shock settings. Yeah, that sounds about right. Your manufacturer will have a suggested sag. And what people don't really understand about sag on snowmobiles and why it's so important is because your skid frame and your shocks are designed to be run at a certain level. Now, obviously, your skid frame is going to drop all the way out and it's going to compress all the way in. But it is designed to run in a certain middle ground with a certain amount of sag. Position-sensitive shocks have a lot to do with that because they are designed, position-sensitive shocks, to have areas within the shock stroke that have more and less damping for different ride characteristics in different size bumps and different rough trail situations. If you are riding too low, then you are in a position where your linkages in your skid frame are ramping up the compression curve on the shock to avoid bottoming, or if you're dropped all the way out, they haven't yet got to a decent compression curve. It's just really interesting. You can have the best riding snowmobile in the world, but if your sag isn't set right, it will feel like the worst riding sled in the world. This sled was a great example. When I first got on it, it was so soft, and I was riding it, I was like, this is our motion. Why is this thing ride so crappy? And then I got off and realized I was using 3/4 of the travel just sitting on it. Once I put the springs up, rides like an R motion. It's amazing. Pie Guy 2012 would like to see a 4-stroke option on backcountry. Do you think we'll get it? I don't think we'll get it. Skidoo's been pretty clear that the backcountry is meant to be like a lightweight crossover sled. I'm not saying it could never happen, but I just don't think, while you would like to see one, I'm not sure there's enough people out there that would want that option to make it worthwhile for them to do. I could be wrong, but it's like, I kind of doubt we'll ever see Polaris with a 4-stroke Assault whenever they decide to do 4-stroke motors properly. Scott McGregor, any rumors on whether the Sidewinder motor will fit in the Catalyst chassis, the 998 motor? It will not. If you've ever seen a Catalyst chassis with no plastic, there is not a millimeter extra room around their 2-stroke motors. It is such a small packaging space for the motor. The 858 motor is specifically designed to fit into the Catalyst chassis. The 600 motor was worked to fit. It needed some modifications, but it fits. But whenever Arctic Cat comes out with a new 600 class motor, whatever that looks like, it will have the same sort of case dimensions as the 858 because that's how it fits. It's the lowest it can possibly get. But no, the Sidewinder motor will not fit in that chassis. In fact, I would say that if Arctic Cat does do a 4-stroke of their own, it's probably going to have to be either a new front clip. I mean, probably it will have to be a new front clip, kind of like Skidoo does. It's a little bit different bulkhead, or it will have to be a very compact 2-cylinder 4-stroke. That's the only way I can see them making it work. Ryan C1414, looking back, how well do you feel the Pro S sleds have aged? They're over 10 years old now, and I feel like a great used value, but the Matrix is better in just about every way. Every comment you just made is correct. I ride with a guy and his son who he has a Matrix, and his son has his old Pro S 800. And honestly, we ride all day together. The son is like 14. He's a great rider. Gideon's his name. He's amazing. And he keeps up on that Pro S, no problem. I think that they're still a really good sled. No questions. Really, really good sled. Are they as good as the newer stuff? No, of course not. I mean, the Matrix is better because it's all the latest technology, but there's nothing wrong with a Pro S or a Pro X. The early versions of that Pro Ride chassis with the articulated rear end, the early versions rode like crap. The later versions, they got it sorted out better, but we're talking about ride height. Those sleds are more sensitive to ride height than any other sled in the industry. At the moment, you have to have your ride height set perfectly on those. They even sent you a tool so you could get it exactly right, or they didn't ride right. Any talks on a new chassis from Skidoo? No, and I don't think we're going to see one. I think that right now we're in a bit of a holding pattern when it comes to technology like chassis. I don't think we're going to see anything new for a while. You're going to see improvements to what we have, but I don't think we're really going to see anything dramatically new. The Pantera has the same motor as the Thundercat. Yes, it does. If it's the Turbo Pantera. Do they make a Pantera with the non-turbo motor? I don't know. I can't remember. The 1049 non-turbo and the 998 turbo, right? Anyway. Chad Gale 9305. Nobody wearing out Hyfax on one ride. Are Yamaha phasers, the 90s ones, still any good for trails and light tree riding? The 90s ones meaning the ones with pogos and like they were barely good in the 90s for trails. I don't know, man. Like if you're talking about the old ones, light tree riding, they did not come with a very long track and they do not have very much power. The Exciter was like a 500 two-stroke. The Phaser was a 488 fan. So I don't know, dude. They are simple. There's no question about it. If you're a trapper, they're probably really good. But if you want to go for like a trail ride, I mean, you can trail ride anything you want. You'll save money on insurance and your trail permit because they're vintage. But I don't know, man. That's yeah, that's a weird one. Let's see. Rob Sanborn, how you doing, Luke? Mentioned in my comment section from the other day, I have watched SnowTrax and DirtTrax since day one. You guys are awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Affliction 8081. Wish they could make the front of a Skidoo smaller like the Polaris. You're talking the bodywork, like the actual physical size of the body of the sled. You know, love or hate it. That sled, that's a 4-stroke, so it's a little bit wider than the 2-strokes, but some people swear the Skidoo is the best looking snowmobile ever, and some people swear the Polaris is, and other people swear the Cat is. It's all personal preference. Robert Inglis G1J. Best ice scratchers for a 2022 Polaris Switchback Assault 850. I don't know. I know that there are some Polaris sleds that have trouble fitting scratchers on the skid frame because there's nowhere on the skid frame to mount them. And so you kind of have to look at those ones that mount either on the running boards or on the A-arms. I'm not sure if an Assault has, I'm pretty sure an Assault has enough space to mount scratchers in the skid. I'm pretty sure. Dave W8515, I enjoyed your dad's podcast. In reference to retiring, did Craig the Intrepid Snowmobiler retire? I've not heard from him in a while. Yes, he did. He still rides, but Craig Nicholson did retire. Good friend of ours, contributed to SuperTrax magazine for a long time. And yeah, he still rides, but he is now Also retired, enjoying himself riding with no ulterior motives these days. Scott McGregor owned a 2016 Apex and a 24 850 boost. Polaris, I'm assuming. It's incredible how good the Apex was and is in every way except overall top end. Well, and handling, and like ride quality and ergonomics. Like, I get what you're. Wait a minute, 2026. Let me think about that again. 2026 Apex. 2016 Apex. Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, okay. So the Apex is the 4-cylinder. Like, ergonomically, they were an old school style sled. You sat down on them at the back. They rode okay, but not great. They didn't handle very good, in my opinion. But they sounded awesome, and that motor was buttery smooth. My gosh, was it smooth. Mike Skidmore. Ice scratchers do nothing if you're running on pavement. True. Snowmobile Freak 88. I agree with you on the ergonomics of the Arctic Cat Catalyst. Was lucky enough to try one last season, and it's truly amazing. Good things to come with that chassis. Agreed, man. Dave Massey E6G. Have you ever adjusted the rear suspension eccentric on the 900R to lighten the front end? Haven't found anybody that has feedback. If you mean the lower mounting point of the front arm on the rails, we have never flipped that. I'm going to do it this year, though. What it was supposed to do is, if you flip it, it puts it back to the way it was before they came out with that design. So when they came out with this design, they actually raised or lowered the mounting of the front arm. I can't remember which one it was, which made it have more ski pressure and keep the nose down more. If you flip it, it goes back to the way it was the previous year before that design came out, which was a lot lighter in the front end, a lot more playful. So that's what I've heard, but I've never done it. Always wanted to, but we get so busy in the winter, it's really hard to do that. Joel Eichner, I run extra wheels on my suspension, 3 on the outside, 2 in the middle, plus 4 on the rear axle, and 4 little ones in the front. Had to cut the rails shorter to run the Walbros drivers. That's a lot of extra, or I'm hoping what you're saying is that's the total number of wheels you have, and not that that's how many you've added. Otherwise, you just got a bogey wheel skid frame pretty much. Mike Skidmore. Blade had a version with an S&S made V-twin Harley-Davidson engine. There you go, four-stroke lovers. That was like a one-off. They never produced those. That was like a show sled. The Blades all had Polaris engines when they first came out, which actually is part of my dad's second Snowflat podcast. He actually talks about Blade in that one, so you want to stay tuned for that. Brian View 9EP. Why do I like this niche sport so much? It makes no sense. Why would anyone want to go out in the middle of the forest and play in the snow? You know exactly why. Snowmobiling doesn't make any sense. Snowmobiling is like, it's a totally illogical thing to do, right? We go outside in the freezing cold when everyone else wants to be inside, and we ride these relatively expensive vehicles on surfaces that get almost no traction, and we can only use these expensive vehicles for like 4 months of the year, and yet once you ride a snowmobile, you can't not ride a snowmobile anymore. That's the beauty of snowmobiling. If you want someone to want to snowmobile, take them snowmobiling, let them ride, and they come back, every one of them goes, wow, that was awesome. And the reason is because you can't get the experience of riding a snowmobile any other way. There is no other way to get the experience of riding a snowmobile other than on a snowmobile. And it is a totally unique experience within the power sports industry. Nothing is like a snowmobile in any way. Also, nothing will take you. I mean, yes, ATV side-by-sides, dirt bikes will take you out into the wilderness, but nothing can take you as far into the wilderness as a snowmobile can because of groomed trails, because of, access to different areas. You can get way out there with other vehicles, but you got to work pretty hard at it. I can go ride 220 kilometers and be home for dinner and have ridden through more wilderness than most bunny huggers will ever see in their life. See, you mentioned last week about wearing a tech vest. Which one do you prefer or ride with? So I have an old tech vest. I have one of their trail sport models, I think it might be called. It's just like really basic with a zipper in the front, no pockets, nothing. It's all mesh. I ride with that one. I also have a version of a race vest that Steve from Tech Vest modified for me, and I used to wear that one. I might actually go back to it. I kind of thought it was more comfortable, a little bit warmer too. Just ride with a tech vest. It doesn't even matter which one. Just realize that if you ride with a tech vest, you are adding a very effective layer of insulation. So I don't ride with a liner in any of my jackets, or I will die of sweat and overheating. I take the liner out, and then I ride with my tech vest. It becomes part of my layering system, and I'm warm up to minus 30, no problems. Greg Chapdelaine. Did anything change in the commercial relationship between Polaris and SnowTrax for 2026? Can you share anything about how the commercial relationship between the OEMs and SnowTrax are structured? Wow, that's a very interesting question. Nothing has changed between Polaris and SnowTrax for 26. We have partnerships with all the OEMs. They buy basically packages on our show, right? They buy commercial space, they buy billboard space, things like that. And then we get a bunch of their products to test and use. And there's some dealings there and behind the scenes. But it's our relationship with our OEMs is something that we value so much. And it's really important to us that we maintain those relationships, but our OEM partners know, and one of the reasons they do partner with us is because we tell the truth. And I've said this many times on YouTube, in the comments especially, but one of the things that we do here that makes people want to listen, as far as I can see, to SnowTrax is that we tell the truth and we tell the things that aren't good. If we just went and told you that everything was great, everything was perfect, and we never picked out any of the little things that weren't right, or we never picked a winner, whatever, any of that kind of stuff, then why would anybody believe us? The OEMs actually feel the same way. Even though when we're nitpicking things, we're nitpicking their vehicles, all that does is make it so that when we talk good about stuff, you can trust that too. Right? If we never said anything bad, why would you trust when we say something good? It doesn't make any sense. So, I'm not going to say that there haven't been many times when we've picked something apart or we've complained about something like in a great degree, and an OEM has called and said, hey, like, why are you so hard on us? And time again, we just say, because we don't believe that what you've done here is right, and we want you to fix it. And there are stories that I could tell but probably won't about OEMs coming to us and saying, hey, you've complained about this on our sleds for so long, come to us, talk to our engineers, and tell us how to fix it. That's true. I'm not making that up, that we have done that more than once and sat in a room full of engineers and said, here's why what you're doing doesn't work, and here's how you need to fix it. Not mechanically, but from an experience standpoint, ride, handling, ergonomics, whatever. Here's how you can fix this vehicle, in our opinion. And it's led to some changes on some sleds that you and I are riding today. So that's not a brag. It's just, there's a great deal of respect between the OEMs and our crew here at SnowTrax, and it's something that we value greatly, which is why when people say we're just paid more by one manufacturer to say something good about them or to pick them as a winner, that it is so utterly ridiculous from our perspective because, first of all, they all pay us. So it doesn't matter what we say. If we say something bad about one sled or good about another sled, or we compare two sleds and one wins, one of our partners is going to be upset about that, right? We tick somebody off. So there's no extra money one way or the other. And the other thing that's ridiculous is that doesn't do us any good to do that. That hurts our overall, level of like respect in the industry, respect with people. And I'm not willing to ever damage that just to say nice things. I won't ever do that. That's not worth it. Have you ever tried Snow Tracker carbides? This is Daniel Kowski 929. I'm sold and have them on all three of our sleds now. Riding is so much more enjoyable without darting. Yes, we used Snow Trackers for a long time and swore by them and had them on everything. Today, things don't dart like they used to. The Snow Trackers had their time, and they're still good. There's nothing wrong with them. I'm not saying that they don't work. But when I'm riding today on modern stuff like this sled behind me, I don't feel the need for them as much as I used to. But there was a time when like you had to have them because sleds darted so bad. Certain sleds worse than others. So yeah, they're a great product. They really are. Mike Skidmore. I just realized that where you live, there are so many trails to ride. You never had to ride in ditches to get from trail to trail. That's actually not true. We have had to ride in a lot of ditches over the years. Not like in Minnesota or, Michigan, places like that. We don't run approaches like they do in those areas, but we have had a lot of ditch trails over the years. Still do have some ditch trails, but they're more like picking through a ditch, to get to one trail to the other, to connect two lakes together, something like that. But we don't have ditch lines like they do, especially in Minnesota. The Minnesota ditch lines and the approaches are a very unique thing. Powderhound 907, is there any interest in racing Iron Dog or doing a video riding in the expedition class in the Iron Dog? Personally, I have no interest in that at all. I respect the guys who do it, man, like you wouldn't believe. It is a brutal, brutal thing to do. It's not my thing. I liked racing cross country back in the day when I raced, but I wanted to race 250 miles in 4 hours. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to do the Nordcan 250, or I raced the I-500 one time. Those were my kind of races over in a day or a couple days or whatever it was. I don't want to go and have to sleep in a tent and do that kind of stuff. That sounds horrible. And it's really, really, really hard / impossible to cover those for TV because they happen over such a huge distance without us having to rent a helicopter and follow riders or like have 10 different crews with cameras all over the place. It's almost impossible to cover those races in any meaningful way, which is why we don't do it, because we can't do a very good job and we won't produce stuff that's not good, so we just don't. Ron Sanborn, once you get the snowmobile bug, it's with you for life. It really is, It's true. And I've heard so many people over the past 2 seasons, this season in particular, who had given up on snowmobiling when we had a bunch of really bad winters in a row. Last year was excellent for us. This year's been really good too. That have said, you know what, I'm going to get back. I'm going to go buy another snowmobile because it's, winter's back. So I think even when you give up on snowmobiling, you don't ever really give up on snowmobiling. Joel Eichner, 3025, for quickness, nothing beats a snowmobile. Best rush out there and no speeding tickets yet. You can get a speeding ticket here, but not on a lake. I know there are places where you can on a lake, but here you can't. But yeah, it's funny every year when we switch seasons from snow to dirt and we get on a 200 horse side by side or a really fast ATV, and you get on a trail and you hold it wide open, you get on the road and you put it to the floor and feel that rush. It's like, it's good, it's fine, because it just can't beat a sled for acceleration and that rush like you're talking about. But then when you switch seasons the other way and you get your first ride on a snowmobile, it's like, whoa, these things pull so hard after being on ATVs and side-by-sides all year. Every year we talk about that, every year. Andrew Lawson, trail rider. My guys and I do not ride particularly fast. I know you wear a tech vest. If I wanted one, what do you recommend? Like I said, their Trail Sport one is really good. It's very lightweight. It breathes a lot, and it's not complicated to put on. I honestly, Steve from Tech Rider has been trying to give me a new tech vest for like 10 years, and I just have never gone in there and got one from him. The new stuff is way better. I don't even know really what it is because I just wear what I've always had. You don't have to spend a ton of money on a tech vest. You just need to get yourself one and wear it. There's different levels, different features and fancy stuff on some and not on others. Buy what you like, but it's a really good idea to wear a tech vest, I think. Especially if you're a person who rides, like more aggressively. I think it's an absolute must-have. Trailburner 207. If you're riding off into the sunset today, you can only bring one sled. What's it going to be? Oh, that's a tough one. If I can only bring one sled, it'd probably be a Switchback Assault, a Polaris Assault 9R. I think that's what it would be for me right now. Only because you can do everything with it, and it's really, really versatile. Yeah, and I love that 9R motor, man. The 9R motor is so sweet. Have Have you guys ever used AMSOIL? Yeah, we've used all different brands of oil over the years. We actually did this weird test. This is going back years ago, where an oil company sent us a bunch of big drums of oil and asked us to only use individual drums with individual sleds all season long. And then they came and they took the sleds apart and looked at how each different type of oil had an effect on the motors. And they were all like, I'm pretty sure they were all brands of oil that had just been dumped into a nondescript tin. So one of them was probably AMSOIL. But yeah, we've used AMSOIL before. Right now we use iPone because iPone gave us like a crap ton of oil. So that's what we're using. But if AMSOIL sent us a crap ton of oil, we'd use that too. Let's see. Scott McGregor, why are so many T intersections poorly marked or no signs at all? They just assume everyone has GPS on phones now. I think what you're dealing with, if you're talking about trails, is that trails are maintained by largely volunteers. And like if you're in Ontario, we have 33,000 kilometers of trails in Ontario. Quebec has a little bit more than that. It's pretty hard to make sure that every intersection is signed in a meaningful way. Everything is signed, especially when you're way out in the middle of nowhere. I think clubs do a pretty good job. You're right. Once in a while, a T intersection doesn't have enough signage, but some clubs do better than others. It can be a little frustrating, but certainly it's better than it used to be. That's for sure. Darwin Benoit 2993. Snowmobiling is similar to motorcycle riding, where when you jump on a sled and just ride and you forget about everything else. That's true. And I was talking about this the other day with somebody. The reason I love snowmobiling and the reason why it's like, some people would look at it and be like, wow, how can that be relaxing? You know, especially when you're trying to ride faster. To be that focused, it must be stressful, and it's not. Because for riding a snowmobile or a side-by-side or an ATV fast, or a dirt bike or street bike, any of those vehicles fast, requires 100% focus. 100% focus, not 99, 100% on what you're doing. And it's the only time when I don't think about anything else. I think about one thing. Every day, all day, my mind is going a million places. It's got tons of things going on there. I'm thinking about all kinds of stuff, problems and things I got to do and plans and the kids and etc. But when I'm snowmobiling, all I can think about is what's coming up around that next corner. That's it. And that is very relaxing for my brain. Oh, Mike Skidmore, I mentioned ditch riding, meant to say riding on the shoulder of the road where half the time one skis on bare pavement. You're right. We don't do as much of that as some places do. We do more than we used to due to closed trails. Early season for me anyway, where I am, where we are here, when our lake is not frozen, there's a trail at the end of our lake that gets us to the main artery railbed trail that takes us everywhere. Before the lake and that trail are good, we do ride quite a lot of bare pavement. We have kind of this process we do for carbides where you always wear your left carbide off more because you're on the side of the road. So you take your right carbide and put it on the left, and you put a new one on your right. So you're always wearing off a carbide on the left that's a little bit worn, and the right one's always fresh, and you just keep doing that to keep rotating them. Rarely, early season, would we ever put on two carbides at a time. There'd be no reason to do that. So yeah, it's true. We do less than a lot of places, but more than we've ever done before, unfortunately. Jamie Hindman, different seeing a Polaris guy with a do hat. See, there's that thing. I am not a Polaris guy right now. And for the past little while, the only reason people think that I'm a Polaris guy is that we're Polaris guys here at SnowTrax is because Polaris is making some of the best handling sleds in the industry. And when I go for a ride, I don't care what color or what brand the sled that I ride is. I couldn't care less. It could be a Hyundai for all I care. Black & Decker could make a snowmobile or Ryobi. I don't even care. I just want to ride the best snowmobile that's possible to ride. One that rides the best, handles the best, has the best power, the most comfortable ergonomics, the best mix of all of those things. That's all I care about. It can be bright pink, don't care. So I say this, with a great level of respect, but it's not my fault that for the past little while, Polaris has been doing a great job of that. Skidoo has come so close now, and like these sleds, this sled behind me, the 852 stroke this year is better than it's ever been. And actually, AJ and I rode a Polaris and an 852 stroke MXZ XRS the other day, all day, and switched back and forth. And like I came away like, this Skidoo is really good, like really good. So things can change. Things can change at any moment. We'll see. I don't usually wear a hat with any brand on it, except this is a brought to you by Skidoo segment, so I'm wearing the Skidoo hat. Justin K5093, do you think Yamaha's actually gone for good? The industry isn't the same without them. Yes, I do think they're gone for good. For one very important reason. And it's the reason I kind of doubt you're ever going to see CF Moto get into the snowmobile industry. The amount of money required to develop a new snowmobile, Yamaha can't come back and just sell the Arctic Cat chassis with the Yamaha motor. They can't do that anymore. That's almost 14 years old. The reason their sales were so low the past few years is because they had nothing new, like nothing. Features slightly, bold new graphics, nothing new. Snowmobilers want new. They want new stuff. And when you see the other manufacturers all moving forward with multiple different chassis iterations, and this one stays the same, people stop wanting that one because they know that what's been developed from other people is getting better and better, and their brand isn't. So if Yamaha was ever to come back, they would have to literally develop their own chassis from the ground up, all new, and it would be a massive, massive financial investment that our industry doesn't really show signs of being able to pay them back with, unless they could come in and sell 15,000 units first year, 20,000 units first year. It's pretty hard to pay back when you figure that just the left-hand switchgear, the molds for the switchgear on the left-hand side that do your hot grips and whatever control your gauge, $300,000 just to develop and produce the mold for that switchgear. So every part on that sled, when you think about the right-hand switchgear, like you got your gauge surrounds and all that stuff, every one of those pieces has a price tag attached to it. It's millions upon millions of dollars to produce just the equipment to build the sleds, just the parts, the molds and the machines and whatever to build the sleds, let alone buying the materials and whatever. So I don't think you're ever going to see it again. I think it's gone for good. Back in like the 70s, like we're talking like 250,000 units a year. There was one point. I mean, it more than that at one point. Snowmobile industry was insane. So when somebody wanted to build a snowmobile, they knew that even if they got like 2% of the market, they were still selling a solid number of snowmobiles. It's not like that anymore. You need like 15% to make any reason, and Yamaha was below that. Powderhound, do you think manufacturer recommended oil makes a difference in longevity? That's a great question. If you ask a manufacturer, 100% use their oil. It's the best stuff. It's totally different than everybody else's. If you talk to an aftermarket oil manufacturer, it's exactly the same thing. It makes no difference at all. I lean towards exactly the same thing. You're trying to tell me that like super high quality oil like iPone, if you put it in your skidoo, it's going to hurt your skidoo or make it last less than the skidoo oil? Like iPone doesn't know how to make a great oil, or that Skidoo's doing something, or Polaris is doing something to their pure Polaris oil that's like secret. Like there's no way. I when it comes to oil, I say buy whatever you want. Buy the best you can afford, because it does make a difference, but buy whatever you want. Kyle Blum, have you had the Skidoo 850 Bog? 60 to 90 miles per hour. It feels like you hit the kill switch. Drags you down to 10 to 30 miles per hour before it picks back up. Please be honest. So when we were riding the other day, AJ and I can't remember if it was the 850 or the 600 that we had, but one of them on the lake, he said he would get to like, I want to say he said like 7,800 RPM, and it would fall on its face. And it was doing it semi-regular, and he had to back way off the throttle before he could get back into it. That kind of sounds like what you're talking about. I wasn't riding it, and I didn't notice it. I did ride it on a lake, and it didn't happen to me, but AJ said it happened to him multiple times on one of the big lakes that we run. He was on that sled. So that's the best I can tell you. We have had e-tecs do things like that to us. We've had some Polarises do things like that to us over the years, where like the change in injectors or injectors aren't working right. So I as honest as I can be, I can't remember if it was the 850 or the 600 we had that did it, but I have felt 850s do it before. So it is a real thing. And I don't know off the top of my head what the solution is, other than to take it to your dealer and have them look at it. Firehawk 841. One thing I do think about is how Polaris took their suspension adjustments from fine-tuning to watered down due to SnowTrax opinions. You're on and off on that one for sure. Yes. We advocated for a simpler adjusting solution on snowmobile shocks as far as compression damping was concerned, and there's a very good reason why. Time and time again, when I'm out on the trails and I meet people at an intersection or at a gas station or a restaurant or whatever, and we get talking sleds, which we do all the time, somebody says, oh yeah, my sled doesn't handle right, or it doesn't ride right, or you said this thing was so great and it doesn't work right. First thing I do is go check their shocks and find out one side it's got 12 clicks, the other side has 2 clicks. Like, straight up, the basic honest truth, 75% of snowmobilers have no idea how to adjust suspension. It's just that simple. 3 clicks, soft, medium, firm, anybody can do that. Those 3 clicks make a big difference. From soft to medium is a big change. From medium to firm is a big change. People understand that, and it works. We like it. It's quick and easy to do. I really like Arctic Cat's system with that IACT, you just push a button and it switches between the 3. That's really cool. But that's why because we've seen so many people over the years who just go, I don't know. And then they get lost in their suspension tuning. High and low speed compression and rebound. 99.9% of people, let alone snowmobilers, people in general, off-road people, don't have a clue how to adjust those 4 things. They don't. I honestly, I have very little idea how to adjust those 4 things because they all affect each other and I don't know exactly how. So yeah, do I think it makes sense for skidoo on the XRS to have gone to a 4 position clicker? No, an XRS needs more clicks. An XRS and XCR, these high-end big bump sleds should have more adjustability, and everybody else does. But when it comes to the mid-level sleds, I 100% agree that people do not need 24 clicks of compression damping. The reality is, the average person cannot tell the difference between 4 and 7 clicks. They can't even tell. It's almost impossible to feel that unless you know exactly what you're looking for. So when you factor in that you've got all these adjustments on shocks, plus you have your coupler blocks, plus you have your torsion springs, and you've got your limiter straps, and you've got etc. All these things in your skid frame and your sled to adjust, it is not a surprise that people get very lost in that, and that is why I think that having 3 or 4 click, 5 click adjustable shocks is maximum for most people. It's all they need. I do think though that having a rebound adjuster is a good thing. Because even if you don't know how to use it, you can just set it and leave it. But if you do know how to use it, it's something that you can use to adjust. I think having for example, a Fox QS3 would be great to have 3 clicks of compression and 3 clicks of rebound that you can adjust. That would be cool. People get that. People understand it. And you rarely see a person with QS3 set wrong. Pine Pig, what kind of truck and trailer are you running? How many sleds are you typically towing when you go out? Our work truck is a Ford with the 6-cylinder turbo in it, the 2.7 6-cylinder turbo. We have a 28-foot enclosed narrow body trailer that'll hold 4 sleds of varying sizes. But we rarely tow unless we're going on a trip. Early season we do a bit, but unless I'm going on a trip, I'm going to Quebec in a week and a half, and I'll be towing, but most of the time we ride right out of our back door. All of our sleds, actually, you can't see it here, but there's a wall right there, and the sleds are all right behind that wall, all of them. So literally I just walk downstairs, get on a sled, ride on the lake, which is right there, like 100 yards from where I'm standing, and the trail's at the end of the lake, so I never have to travel on cars that much. We're very fortunate that way. Jimmy Saff, did you get to ride with the Skidoo guys last Wednesday? Yes, I mentioned that at the beginning. I did. It was really interesting. They brought us something to try that was really good on our 852 stroke. I can't wait to talk to you guys about it more. You guys are talking about communicators. I can't stand communicators. I don't want to hear anybody else's voice in my head. The only time I like a communicator is when I'm riding with my daughter so I can help her, tell her we're stopping, whatever, and just give her signals. But I don't want to hear any of my buddies talking to me while I'm riding. And I don't want to listen to music. I like to hear the sled. The sled makes enough music. I don't need to have music playing in my head either. Ron Sanborn. I actually just mentioned CF Moto making sleds, so I'm sure you heard that part. Jack Cliff 6040. Thoughts on backcountry 850 and switchback 850 for off-trail riding? I have a backcountry and love it, but want to know how good the Polaris is. They are so close in terms of capabilities. It's all about feel. What do you feel comfortable on? That's really the only way I can answer that question. I've ridden both. Now that you can get a narrow and a wide version of both of those sleds, you can have it exactly how you want it. It's next to impossible to pick one over the other. You can get a switchback in a 900 now, which is so awesome. But as far as a backcountry versus switchback for off-trail riding, it's all about personal preference. I honestly don't think one's better than the other. I think they're both equally as good. It's all, how do you feel when you sit on it? How do you feel when you stand on it? How does it feel when you get it on its side? Those are all the things that matter most. And I can ride both of them. I know AJ feels really comfortable on the skidoo. I do as well. I feel a little bit more comfortable on the Polaris, but that's a very small difference. So yeah. He said she sled. What killed Yamaha is they weren't able to sell to Russia for years because of sanctions. That's not what killed Yamaha. They were selling a lot of sleds to Russia, but that isn't what killed Yamaha. What killed Yamaha was the fact that their market share kept dropping and dropping and dropping because they had nothing new over and over and over. And then Arctic Cat, I believe this is what happened, is Arctic Cat said, hey, there's only so many more years we want to build this chassis. We want to get over and switch everything over to the Catalyst platform, in various forms. So the time is limited for this chassis. And Yamaha just said, okay, well then what's the point? That's kind of what I think. When they looked at their sales, they realized that without Arctic Cat's chassis, there was no reason for them to build a new chassis just to put their motors in. Yeah, that's kind of where I see it. Dan Ukulowski, I have to laugh at people who refuse to believe the massive fun difference between the Polaris 650 and 600 e-tec motors. I definitely consider an MXZX with 140 horsepower. Are you saying that it makes sense for Skidoo to build a 650 because the 650 Polaris feels more fun? Because that's what I think. The 600 e-tec motor is great. There's nothing wrong with it as a 600, but when you get off of a 600 and get onto a Polaris 650, you go, wow, I didn't think 50 cc's could make such a big difference, but it does. So yeah, I think that if Skidoo pulled out a 650, everyone wants to say 670. I hope they don't do 670 only because you're getting too close to 700 now, and it's like, what if Polaris comes out with a 680? You got that CC creep. 650 is still in that mid-level, you're still a 600 class sled, but once you go above that, I think you're pushing into a new market. And we did that already in the 90s where it was like, oh, we've got a 500, then we've got 600, now we got a 650, now we got a 700, now we got an 800, and it just kept creeping up and up and up. I just hope we stick with their generalized categories, but we'll see. Definitely an MXZX with 140 horsepower would be super nice. Mike Skidmore, a sled bogging like that could be a bad drive-by-wire throttle. The two-stroke Skidoos do not have a drive-by-wire throttle. They are a cable throttle. Um, 460 SW3. Do you think we'll ever see another version of the Pro XC rear suspension from Polaris in the future? I'm still holding on to my 2020 850 XCR switchback. So fun. I don't think so. Actually, Dad and I were talking about just the other day. Literally, we were like sitting after dinner. We have family dinner every Sunday with AJ's family, my parents. And we were sitting after dinner on Sunday and we were talking about that. Mostly because, as I said earlier, I was riding with a buddy of mine whose son has a Pro S with the skid frame or the rear suspension. And I was talking about how good it was. It was definitely good, but it had some downsides. It had some things about it. Like it really couldn't be set up to ride super plush on small bumps. It was a harsher feeling skid frame suspension design than the R Motion was or than Pro CC was. And that was simply a function of design, how it was designed, where all the pieces had to fit and how everything had to move, everything had to fit together, and motion ratios and how you do that with linkages and stuff. It was all just, it worked really good. And what it did for Polaris, what it did for us, why you like your XCR switchback so much is because it sort of, I don't want to say reinvigorated, it almost invented, at least in North America, that sensation of sitting on the tank to get your skis to bite or leaning back to get your sled to wheelie, which is what Polaris still do better than anybody else, maybe other than Lynx does it too. But that's what it really did. I mean, I remember riding that Pro X, and like you could steer that sled on the trail by wheeling it, counter steering the skis while they're in the air, and leaning it. It would go around a corner like a dirt bike with pulling a wheelie going around a corner. It was insane. It was so flippin' fun to ride. And even with Pro CC with a solid tunnel, we've lost a little bit of that. But when you ride like an XCR set up properly and you're on the trail, you still get that super light skis when you want it. And then when you put it into a corner and you lean forward, it just bites. So yeah, that's really what that did for us. And I think that it was a great design experiment for Polaris. I think it did a lot of good. And I think it gave us Pro CC in the long run. So yeah. Matt Holist. Anyway, please tell us that the 650R is in the pipeline at BRP. There are a lot of rumors, but AJ and I both have talked to all the right people. I've been to Rotax, he went to Skidoo. None of us saw any like definitive proof, but Skidoo's not stupid, and they know. Even like when I was riding with the guys from Skidoo, we had a 650 VR1 with us, and the guys rode it, and they were that's one thing I like about these guys from Skidoo is they were not afraid to say what the competition sleds do well. And both of them said how great the 650 motor is, so they're not oblivious to the fact that 650 works, and that extra 50 cc's makes a big difference. And Skidoo, I mean, they'll update things on sleds every year to make marginal increases. You don't think they want to build a motor that makes a massive increase? Of course they do. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that sooner than later. Again, though, I always have to preface these things. I don't have a reason to think that other than just that's what I think. I wish I could say that I saw something secret, but I didn't. So fingers crossed. Jody Turcott 4602. You're so right on shocks. New riders who want the best should get smart shocks or dynamics from Polaris. Honestly, man, I rode that VR1 Dynamic 650. I spent a couple days on it, and like, man, it works good. It really, really works good. And it's not just ride quality and big bump handling, it's handling. Like going around a corner, it makes going around a corner better. And Smart Shocks as well on the Skidoo does the same thing, though I do feel, most of us here feel that it's less effective than Dynamics is. Guys from Skidoo hate it when we say that, but that's just how I feel when we ride. I can't deny it. I think Smart Shocks is more high tech, but I think Dynamics is working, is having a greater effect on the sled. Just seat of the pants, just what I feel. 5 points, 090. Have you ridden a VR1 and an XCR back to back? What's the real difference between the two, and what would you choose for what purpose? Yes, I've done that. I've done that a lot, like days and days and weeks of doing that exact same thing. What's better? Okay, so let's talk about 2025. Sorry, let's talk about 2025. 2025, the XCR had a more playful feel. When you were riding it, it got the skis lighter, easier. It was just more engaging to ride. It was more fun, which is why when people say, oh, it's a big bump sled, and guys who don't ride big bumps, it's not for you. Totally disagree. You're totally wrong, because I've ridden both of those sleds, and I prefer the XCR even on smooth trails. It just has a more playful feel for somebody who rides like I do. Plus, I know that at the end of the day, if the trails are whooped to crap, I can crank up a few clickers and go hit those whoops as hard as I want to and not worry about it. VR1 handles stable, flat, handles amazing, especially with Dynamics, but even without. Great handling snowmobile, great riding snowmobile. Everything else about it is excellent, but it's just not quite as playful as the XCR is. Now let's move to 2026, when Polaris changed the XCR. All of a sudden now the XCR doesn't handle as well as the VR1 does. The VR1 handles better in the corners because the XCR has a raised ride height in the front, and stiffer spring rates all the way around, stiffer compression damping base settings all the way around. So you now have a harsher ride and a higher center of gravity, which makes it more tippy, and therefore it doesn't handle as good as a VR1 does anymore. It's still playful. It's still really fun to ride, but if you're a person who wants to ride fast on trails, you got to take a VR1 now. On top of all of those things, you guys have heard me talk about this before. I'm pretty upset about it. You cannot get a 900. I can't get a 9R in a VR1. So 9R, in my opinion, right now in the industry, best motor in the industry. Not from a like a economy, fuel economy, whatever standpoint. From a fun to ride standpoint, there's nothing more fun than a 9R. And I loved an XCR 9R. It was my favorite snowmobile. It won sled of the year last year. And Polaris just basically said, okay, well, screw you guys who like the XCR 9R for, Ontario type riding. We're going to reserve that just for the ditches of Minnesota and Tug Hill on a Saturday afternoon. You guys all have to buy a VR1 and you can't have a 9R. So clearly I have feelings about this. Kyle Blum, the shock subject. 99% of people don't know how to adjust shocks. That's why I stopped referring people to the Rave, because they don't know how to adjust them. Lynx is only great when you know how to. I actually support that comment 100%. The Lynx is awesome. The Pro 46s on the Lynx are incredible. They are, in my opinion, the best shocks in the entire industry right now, from on a factory sled. But you really do have to know how to use a shock if you want to make it work right, especially because the Lynx rear skid is not coupled. So if you want it not to just wheelie all the time, then you got to know how to set those shocks up right to get it to ride well, but also still keep the skis on the ground. It's very, very specific how you do it. But yeah, I 100% agree with you. Too many adjustments for people who don't know what they're doing means they get it wrong, and then they end up on a sled that's riding inferior to what it could if they knew more or if they just had simpler shocks. Mike Skidmore, yes, the BRP guys did come here to the headquarters. They actually got dressed right here in their snowmobile gear. Even though the delayed flight, they actually didn't make it here. They were supposed to stay in town the night before the ride, but they ended up staying about an hour and a half south. It was 2 a.m. by the time they got to the furthest or the closest city to us that had a hotel, so they stayed there and came up in the morning. And then they were already back in Toronto that same night and on a plane at 6 a.m. the next morning. So they were here for like less than 24 hours. Wild Hockey Fan 47, why does Polaris not include the spanner wrench needed to adjust shock preload by default? Had to go buy one at my dealer today to adjust my front track shock on my 25 VR1. I don't know. They used to. The toolkit used to have that tool in it. But I don't know. Funny story, our Polaris dealer oftentimes takes the toolkits out of our Polaris sleds so that we don't lose them. And then when we need them, we don't have them. That's why I carry a multi-tool with me everywhere I go. But yeah, I don't know that. You're right. I would say that if you're a guy who rides a Polaris, you should probably just make sure you go somewhere and buy one of those wrenches and just have it. Because, I mean, even if you're not a Polaris rider, just go buy that wrench and have it. Everyone needs it once in a while. And they work for all kinds of other things too. .518 Choppers New York 3. You are more than welcome, man. Thank you for watching and reading all these years. It means a lot to us. We really do appreciate every one of you guys who watches the show, who read SuperTrax, who tunes in here. Without you guys, we can't do what we do. And I've said this many times on the show. I don't know if I've said it here, but I will. The favorite part of my job, there's a lot of fun parts of my job. My favorite part is the people, is you guys. When I get to meet you guys, when I'm on the trail, when we're at a restaurant, somebody comes over to talk and ask questions or give their opinion on something I've said, or just talk about snowmobiles, just talk about the sport that we all love. It's my favorite part of doing this, meeting new people, having conversations. That's why I love snowmobiling more than any other sport. Any other sport, snowmobiling is my favorite. Ace F3D, I have a 25 Adrenaline 900 Turbo R and I want to upgrade shocks because the standard ones are not up to my specs. Which brand should I go with in your opinion? Elka. No question, Elka. Elka makes, as far as aftermarket shocks go, Elka makes some of the very best aftermarket shocks in the industry, if not the very best. I would argue they probably are the very best. Not only that, but when you order Elka shocks from Elka, they don't just build you shocks and say, here you go. You have to fill out forms or give them all kinds of information about you, your sled, how you ride. the conditions you ride in, etc. And then they build your sled spec'd just for you, specifically for you, which is super cool. And you don't have to go to like the full stage 5 shocks. Stage 3s are great from Elka, and you don't have to spend all the money on the highest end ones. Even their mid-range shocks are still really good and would be a big upgrade for your adrenaline. It's one thing Skidoo I really wish they do better on is their mid-level shock packages are really sad. Like an adrenaline, you know, is kind of in line, I guess, with an XC Polaris level, kind of. Maybe an X package is an XC, it's hard to say. But like, put some adjustable shocks on those things. You know, the adrenaline is a good package. It's not your base model yet, so yeah. Scott McGregor 2757. What pipe would you recommend for the 850 boost? I have no idea. We don't do stuff like that. We don't put pipes on things. I know that if I was going to buy a can, I would buy an MBRP can because I've been there. I've seen how they build stuff. I know about their dedication to quality and to performance, to lightweight. They don't just build a pipe and say, it fits, it sounds cool here. We don't know what it does for power. I was actually with them when they rejected like 5 different iterations of an exhaust on the dyno because it didn't make more power. It was on a side-by-side, but they just kept saying, this one doesn't make more power, get rid of it. This one doesn't make more power, get rid of it. And just had to keep going back to the drawing board until they got more power. So MBRP really, truly does care about sound, about lightweight, and about making more horsepower. So if I was buying a can, I would buy that can. Pipe-wise, not a clue. No idea. Oh, you meant can. Okay, there you go. There you go. You got my answer fully on that one. Justin Shepard, I4N. You guys should do a family snow flap show with your father. Ah, that's a great idea. That's so good. Yeah, we should totally do that. I was going to have him on here, but that's probably a better idea is for us to go there and do that and just talk. That would be fun. We do that every Sunday anyway. Matheson Hood. 2018 Pro X was the nice feeling sled I've ever been on. I love the Pro X. It didn't go around its corner as good as a Pro S did, but it was totally worth it for the fun, the playfulness of that sled. Thoughts on a Boost XCR with dynamics? It doesn't exist. They've basically said they won't build it because people who ride XCRs don't want the extra weight or power, style of power that a Boost gives you, and they don't want the extra weight of dynamics. They would rather have the manual adjustment on the shocks. Why you can't have both is exactly the question I would love to have answered. Why can't we just have what we want? Modern production lines would allow for it, especially if you're only doing it during spring order. You know, if you want that sled, you have to snow check it, right? You're never gonna buy one in season. Why not give us that? Why not let us check the boxes we want to check? Ron Sanborn. I remember when Polaris came out with the M10. That was awesome back then. And now look at Polaris today. The M10 wasn't a Polaris product. That was the Karpik brothers who invented that. The guys who invented the blade. That was their thing. And it was a lot older than what you think it was by the time it ended up in a Polaris. But we had an Indy Classic with an M10 here. My dad put 11,000 kilometers on it in one winter, I think. He rode that sled everywhere. And, you know, the M10 was great in its element. In small to medium-sized bumps, nothing could outride an M10. But as soon as you got into bigger bumps or you got into especially like gravity cavities, you know, like rolling hills, it was terrible because it was a complete falling rate skid frame. The further up the skid compressed, the less compression damping you got. And in the early ones didn't have any real bottoming, like anti-bottoming control. Later on they did in the shock. They had a dramatic rise in compression damping at the very end of the shock stroke to help your back when it would go into a gravity cavity. You got to remember, you're starting with more compression damping and getting less as you go into the shock, or as you go into the travel, sorry. So as you're going into this gravity cavity, you're down at the bottom and your weight is all pushing down, the sled would just go like that and collapse, and it hurt every time. So the M10 had its place, but yeah, it was a thing. I don't know what to say about that. It had its place. Here's an interesting one for you. This is something I didn't know. This is something the Skidoo guys taught me. I did not know that all front arms on all modern skid frames today are falling rate. All the front arm on snowmobiles is a falling rate ratio on the front arm. I had no idea. Rising rate on the back, but falling rate on the front. Pretty interesting. also asked why that is, and it's a very interesting answer to that question that I can give you. This isn't a secret, but the reason is because the rising rate effect on the rear arm of a skid frame on modern snowmobile skid frames comes from the linkages that are in that skid frame with the shock. You know, there's like a little cam thing and all that stuff. That's what causes for the rising rate on the rear arm. On the front arm, we don't have any linkages on the front arm. It's basically just bolted into two places. If you don't have the linkage, you end up with a falling rate. To put a linkage on, and they've done it, to see how it would work, causes so much more complexity in the skid frame that they've decided it's not worth it. I don't know how I feel about that, because I can feel a front arm bottoming more than the rear arm when I ride, especially a skidoo. But yeah, totally new piece of information for you. Had no idea that all front arms were falling rate. Snowmobile Freak 88. Honestly, 600 class sleds are really fun to ride. You're right, they are. 600 class sleds are super fun to ride. And you know, I have a theory on that. One of the reasons that 600 class sleds are so fun to ride is because you can hold them wide open more often, and it just feels good to hold something to the bar. Even if it's not going as fast as another sled at 2/3 throttle, it's still fun to just wring a sled out, you know, knowing that you're taking it to the max. And corner to corner in a 600 when you're just on the gas, off the gas, full throttle, on, you know, that just feels so good. It just feels like you're going faster, even though you're not. Aren't Polaris race sleds, the 600s, putting out about 160 horsepower? So here's what I know. The Skidoo 600 race sled, the 600 RS, so the motor that they're using on the snowcross tracks right now, makes only a tiny bit more horsepower than the 600 trail sled engine that you're riding. That came right from an engineer. So I highly doubt a Polaris 600 race motor is putting out 160 horsepower. That's that's more than most 800s did back when we had 800s. Most 600 class sleds are putting out somewhere in the 225 to 230, 125 to 130 horsepower range. Is Polaris pumping out 30 more horsepower to their race motor? I highly doubt that. Those motors on pro class snowcross sleds have to be stock. They are not allowed to modify anything but the exhaust. So I kind of doubt that that's what's going on. Jimmy Saft, do you think Polaris will turbo the S4 or release a snowmobile specific four-stroke? I have answered this question every podcast, I think, or every YouTube live so far. If they don't turbo the S4, then they have to build a specific four-stroke. If they build a specific four-stroke, they still need a turbo version. They need to build a specific four-stroke. Are they going to? I don't know. I haven't had any news from Polaris from that perspective. I sincerely hope so, because the S4 motor is really good, but it's a 90 horsepower motor. It's not where people want to buy a four-stroke motor. Like, people do, but the majority of people don't. The majority of people want 130 horsepower four-stroke. That's where the meat of the market is, and they don't have anything to compete there. Mike Seymour, what restaurant did you guys say you frequent? Maybe I'll renew my passport. Restaurant when we're riding? When we're in Whitney, which is where I've been the last two rides, we go to the Mad Musher. Other restaurants? I don't know. I go anywhere. You guys, if you're an American, you have Jimmy John's, and that is my absolute favorite sub shop in the entire world. We just got one about an hour and a half from my house, and I'm not going to lie, I drove an hour and a half one way to buy a Jimmy John's sub, and then I drove home. That's how much I love Jimmy John's, so you guys are lucky. Mike Seymour, did I just see a new video on Elka shocks on SnowTraxtv? I have not watched it. Yes, you did. I believe you did. We did a story, whether it's aired yet or not, I'm not sure, but we have done a story on Elka shocks. We've been working with Elka for a long time on a lot of different projects that we've done around here, and simple fact of the matter is, other companies make really, really good shocks, but Elka makes, in our opinion, the best shocks. We have sought them out for our projects. We could have gone to anybody for our projects, and we probably would have been able to get shocks from anybody, but we went to Elka on purpose because we wanted the best. AJ's WR700, Grizzly builds, and things like that. When we want the best, we go to Elka. $850 Dynamics. Thanks, man. I'll let Mark know you said that. Scott McGregor, would you get into a fight with Snowmobiler TV if we met in a forest? No, man, no. Honestly, like Jeff from Snowmobiler Television, he used to be a host here on SnowTrax before I was, and Jeff is a great guy. He taught me everything I know about TV, and he is a great guy. I have nothing bad to say about Jeff. I don't know Briar, so I can't say anything about her. She's a good host on Snowmobiler Television for sure. I've watched some of their segments. They do things a lot differently than we do. Their show has sort of morphed into a little bit different style of show where each episode is one topic or one location. We do that once in a while, but not very often. But I got nothing bad to say about those guys. Jeff's a good guy. I know a couple of their filmographers. They're good guys too. So I wouldn't get into fights with them. I'd be more than happy to, at the end of the day, have a beer with them in a restaurant somewhere though. That'd be fun. Tell some old stories. Snowmobilers, man. I've said this before. A little insight into the snowmobile industry that you guys would never have been able to see. But there was a time in the '90s and early 2000s where the snowmobile media all couldn't stand each other. It was an old guard. That was before sort of AJ's in my time, just when I was starting to get into it. When I was 17, would be 97, 98, 99, around then was when I started doing this job. And when you go to an event, media didn't talk to each other and we stared each other down. And I don't know why. I honestly don't know why, other than there was a bit of an old school mindset that like they're the enemy. And I'm not saying I changed it, but when I went into that world, I decided to just be different and not treat everybody else like they're an enemy, even though I don't know them. I always tried to talk to everybody and be friendly with everybody. And now, not that it was me, I'm not taking credit for this, I'm just saying times have changed. When we go away on a trip and I get together with the other snowmobile media, we all sit around and talk. And at the end of the day, if we're in a lodge somewhere and there's a fireplace and a bar, we'll have a drink down by the fireplace and talk and hang out. Like, we get along. We work together really well now too. Back in the old days, it was like you were trying to grab the sled that you needed and then leave as far away as you could get so no one else could have that sled, so you're the only one who could get it. And that was kind of selfish and kind of not the right way to treat people. Now though, like, I'll go up to somebody, say there's Snowmobile Television, or there's Sledded 24/7 or whatever, or there's other guys using a sled. It's like, hey, how long are you gonna have that sled for? Because I'd really like to shoot it too. And they'll be like, oh, no problem. We'll make sure we're done with it really soon and we'll bring it right over to you. Or they'll come to us and say, hey, you guys can use that sled all day. And it's like, no, absolutely not. You guys are more than welcome to it. When we're done, we got another maybe half hour with it, and then it's all yours. Even though I would like to keep it longer, it's better for everyone to work together and get along. It benefits me when I need a sled they have. It benefits them when they need a sled I have. And at the end of the day, when we're all sitting around the dinner table having a beer and talking, it's a lot more fun to get along with people. So I have no animosity towards anybody in the snowmobile industry, in the snowmobile media industry right now. Winchbusters, not a fair fight. Sledhead is indestructible. Sledhead has been asleep for a long time and may or may not ever come back, but he is a SnowTrax legend, and we haven't heard from Sledhead in a while. Malone 0480, why have the cost of these machines got so high? Will anyone make a budget ride, and will the tech of suspension run out? And will the tech of suspension run out? They can run model and CAD, only so much you can do. Okay, I'm going to try and translate that. But the cost of machines has not got any more high comparatively or by percentage than any other power sports in the industry right now. Likewise, if your loaf of bread costs twice what it did 5 years ago, why would you think that your snowmobile wouldn't cost more as well? We are living in a time of great inflation. In the past 10 years, but 5 years in particular, inflation has gone through the roof, and your snowmobile got more expensive. Got more expensive because the materials to build the parts to make the sled got more expensive. The materials to put the sled together got more expensive. The labor for the people who put the sleds together got more expensive. Even things like, the electricity to run the plant got more expensive. The truck drivers who drive the parts and materials and sleds and deliver them and all that kind of stuff, that all got more expensive. Why would your sled not get more expensive? Of course they did. And when you look at it by percentage, it's actually not as bad as you think it is. On top of that, look at the technology that we have right now in our sleds. I mean, really think about it. When you go back 10 years, we had really great snowmobiles, but we didn't have anything like what we have today. I mean, we have in-dash GPSs with tracking for our friends. We've got, electronic suspensions. We have power steering. We have all of these cool things, e-tec and all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, we have so much cool technology on our sleds. They are the best snowmobiles have ever been. And when you spend money to make snowmobiles better, when you spend money to make any product better, you're going to have to charge more for that product. Now, when you say, why are there not budget sleds out there? There absolutely are. I mean, you've got the SP Polaris lineup, which is a very affordable lineup of snowmobiles. Are they more expensive than affordable sleds used to be? Yes, you used to be able to buy a budget sled for $10,000. Well, you can't really do that anymore. But that's simply because everything in the world is more expensive. My pickup truck that I drive today is twice the price of the pickup truck I bought, same package level as the one I bought in 2015. It's double. I have more stuff on it. It's got a bigger screen. It's got a few more features, but it does the same thing, but it costs me twice as much. So I'm not going to complain about the price of snowmobiles. With that said, I don't have to buy them, but still, you can't expect that snowmobiles aren't going to get more expensive. That any power sports thing is going to get more expensive, isn't going to get more expensive when everything else in the world is. But go buy an SP, go buy a couple-year-old used sled. There's lots of used stuff out there, Skidoo makes the sport line. There's all kinds of sleds in that lineup, So there are things out there you can buy that aren't 25 grand. Scott McGregor, what area trail, say from town to town, would you rate as your favorite trail? Buddy. Honestly, the trail I've ridden the last 2 times I've ridden, the one I rode with the guys from Skidoo, we call it the Hydro Line to Whitney. I don't know what number trail it is, but it's one of 2 trails that go through our provincial park, Algonquin Park. It's the only motorized vehicle trail that is allowed to go through there. It is absolutely phenomenal. It's probably the most fun you can have. There's another trail. I wouldn't know how to describe it to you if you didn't know where it was, but Sherburne Lake area. There's another trail up there that is just so fun. Trail 64, I think it is. And it's awesome too, but to get there, you got to have more snow, whereas the Hydro Line doesn't need a lot of snow because it's basically an access road. It's so great. If you're ever in Ontario, ride from Haliburton to Whitney. Just do it. You won't regret it. So I got I'm over 8:30. So I got like one more question I can answer, and I got to go. Let's see what's a good one. Do you hate that Alaskans call them snow machines and don't use the term snowmobile? I hate it a lot less than when everyone calls every snowmobile a skidoo, that's for sure, Powderhound. No, that doesn't bother me. Snow machines doesn't bother me at all. But calling a Polaris a skidoo drives me nuts. Don't use my name, okay? While husband is in the bathroom, tell me how to disable his snowmobile without hurting it so he can't use it. I assume that's that's great. I won't do that. Man code, right? That's a great one. Okay, this is going to be the last one. Beamer Geek 3353. Do you see Cat doing a turbo 2-stroke for next season? No, not for next season. Do I see them doing a turbo 2-stroke at some point? I think they're going to have to, and I think that their new leadership is very much focused on being, the best in every way they possibly can, and you can't not do what everyone else is doing when it's as successful as turbo 2-strokes have been. So I think, yes, you're going to see an Arctic Cat turbo 2-stroke at some point, but I think they have different priorities right now than that. I think they have higher priorities than a turbo 2-stroke. Immediately, now that the company's been bought, this is their first season with new ownership. Money's being pumped into R&D, a lot more than what was being pumped into there before. They got great minds there. They brought back all the right people who know what they're doing and you can trust to build amazing products. People who brought us the amazing products back in 2010, 11, and 12 when Arctic Cat really was a force to be reckoned with. Those guys are back and they know what they need to do. So unfortunately, Arctic Cat, it has been behind everybody else in terms of certain types of technology, but they're going to have to stay behind a little bit until they can get some certain things that need to be sorted out, and then they can move on to the other things. But I 100% believe that they're going to catch up. First thing I'd like to see them do is a new skid frame. Next thing is I'd like to see them fix the 858 so it's the powerhouse we all know it can be. And then I want to see a new 600 class motor that fits down low in the chassis like the 858 does. I'd like to see them do a 4-stroke, obviously. I want to see them do like catalyst sleds in different categories, touring sleds, things like that, to move the catalyst into a wider range of sleds in their lineup. They just bought Widescape, so that's showing that they're doing something and trying to do things that are different and move into different markets. That one was a pre-built product for them that they just bought and they can sell, but they're going to sell it for a really great price, which is super cool. And I think if you guys haven't tried a Widescape and you can get your hands on one, try it. You'll love it. Anyway, yeah, that's what I think. But Arctic Cat is coming back real hard, real strong, real fast. Andrew Lawson, Jimmy John's rules, simply the best. If you ever come to Canada, to Ontario, put a Jimmy John's in your backpack and bring it for me, okay? Turkey Tom, no tomato. That's what I want. All right, guys, that has to be the last comment. It was about Jimmy John's, which is not ironic for anyone who knows me. Thank you for a really great time tonight. It was awesome. I had fun chatting with you guys. Lots of different topics covered. Some funny things talked about. Some interesting things talked about. I learned some things from you guys. I hope you learned some things from me. Thank you again for supporting Mark in Snowflap. And make sure you guys leave him a comment on his Snowflap YouTube videos if you see them, and let him know that you appreciate what he's doing. It means, honestly, truthfully, it means the world to him. It really does. And the rest of us, because he's my dad and I care about him and I want him to be happy. So do it. Yeah, great time tonight. Thanks, guys. Another big shout out to Skidoo. Thank you so much for supporting this YouTube live. I'm having a ball doing this. I really enjoy it. I hope you guys are too. And a lot of credit to Skidoo there for helping us make this real. And so next week we'll be back. It's 3 weeks in a row after Christmas, I believe. So we have another one of these next Tuesday, and then we'll go back to the every other week that we were in before. So stay tuned next Tuesday, 7 o'clock, same bat time, same bat channel. Yeah, we'll have some more great conversations. Bring your questions. That's one thing I keep saying is during the week when you're thinking about stuff and you're like, you got questions, write them down on your phone and bring them, and I'll do my best to answer them. Obviously, I don't have every answer. It's impossible. Mark probably has almost every answer, but it's impossible to have every answer. But I try my best to give you guys the information I do have and give it to you as honestly as possible. So thank you guys very much. This was super fun. I truthfully hope in every possible way that you're getting out and you're putting some miles on. If you're in Ontario and you're riding and you see any of us from SnowTrax, any of our crew, please come over and say hi. It's never an inconvenience. It's never bothering us. I always love it. So make sure you do that. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you on the trail. If not, we'll see